You know that feeling when you've been driving in a car for hours and the radio has just been on the whole time? Like it's just playing this low-level static and maybe some overlapping, really indistinct chatter?
Oh, yeah. Like you're driving through the middle of nowhere and losing the signal.
Right. And you don't even realize how loud and, frankly, exhausting it is until suddenly you just reach over and turn it off.
And the silence is just deafening. In a good way.
Exactly. In that sudden quiet, it's like you actually feel yourself take a full, deep breath for the first time all day. It's not just an absence of noise, It's this profound physical and psychological relief. It feels like you're returning to a baseline that you just entirely forgot existed.
Yeah, that drop in cognitive pressure.
Yeah.
That is the exact psychological relief we are looking at today. Because, well, most of us are walking around with that internal static turned all the way up, literally all the time. And we're completely unaware of the toll it takes on our mental bandwidth. So true. Well, today, we're going to learn how to finally turn that dial down for you. We're embarking on a pretty profound deep dive into this concept of presence.
And the source material we have for you today is really something else. It's this fascinating document simply titled Presence.docs.
Yeah, and what this text does is it brilliantly weaves together these really deep, almost cryptic philosophical maxims about our true nature with a literary masterclass on navigating the sheer anxiety of existence.
And it does all of this using William Shakespeare's Hamlet, of all things.
Well, I know, right? It's such a wild combination.
It is an incredibly ambitious parry. The document basically takes the ultimate human existential crisis and answers it with this profound, unshakable stillness. So our mission for you today is to decode the answer to, well, arguably the English language's most famous question: to be or not to be. We're going to discover how tapping into what the source document calls silence can radically shift how we process life's unpredictable twists of fate. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we tackle the famous Prince of Denmark, we have to establish the actual ground rules, right? Like, what does presence even mean according to our source's opening framework?
Right, so the document starts not with a stage direction or a Shakespearean quote, but with a series of very dense philosophical statements. The opening lines set the tone immediately. It says, silence speaks volumes. Without uttering a word, nothing is unsaid.
Which, that feels like a Zen riddle right out of the gate.
It really does. It points to a state of being rather than, a physical action. The text makes this remarkably bold core assertion here. It argues that one who understands the true nature of being beneficially impacts all that he or she encounters.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you listening right now? If I'm listening to this and I hear that the, quote, greatest good I can do for others is to focus internally and know thyself. Doesn't that sound a bit self-indulgent on the surface?
Okay.
Or is the text making the case that this internal silence is like the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for truly helping anyone else?
What's fascinating here is how the text completely flips our normal understanding of doing good on its head, right? By elevating being overdoing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because we traditionally view helping others as a mechanical action, volunteering our time, offering unsolicited advice, actively trying to fix someone else's problems.
Right, getting our hands dirty.
Exactly. But the text suggests that if you are approaching those external actions from a place of intense internal static and anxiety, your impact is going to be severely limited, or even honestly destructive.
Wow, destructive, really?
Yeah, because you end up projecting your own noisy chaos onto the exact people you are supposedly trying to help.
Ah, I see. You're basically broadcasting your static onto their frequency.
That's a perfect way to put it. By knowing via being, by accessing that core silence, your very presence becomes a stabilizing force. The text defines knowing thyself not as accumulating psychological facts about your personality quirks or like mapping out your childhood trauma.
Right, not like taking a personality quiz.
No, not at all. It defines it as knowing via being. It states that you must realize your true nature is love, and that it is the fundamental nature of love to love. The exact phrasing is, you are that.
You are that. And it explicitly states that another name for this true nature is silence, which honestly brings me back to the car radio analogy from the start.
Oh, yeah, tie that together.
Right, so if our modern minds are constantly playing these noisy, overlapping stations of daily worries, endless to-do lists, and future anxieties, the silence the text is talking about isn't just some empty, boring void.
No, absolutely not.
It's the act of turning off the static so you can finally hear the actual broadcast, like you become a clear channel.
Yes. When you remove the friction of the ego and the constant neurotic narration of your own life, You just stop forcing an agenda on the present moment. You interact with people as they actually are, not as characters in your, anxious mental simulations.
Oh, anxious mental simulations. I love that phrasing.
Right. And that clear channel state is how your mere presence beneficially impacts an environment.
Well, that concept of the anxious mental simulation perfectly sets the stage for a man who is the absolute antithesis of a clear channel.
No boy. Yes, it does.
A character completely and utterly consumed by his own internal static. So we understand that our true nature is equated to silence. Now we pivot to the ultimate human struggle to actually achieve that state. And that brings us to the most famous quote in the English language.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Right. And the source document provides the full text of this agonizing, iconic speech. But reading it strictly through this newly defined lens of presence, it kind of changes the entire complexion of the play, doesn't it?
It really does. The source dissects Hamlet's intense internal debate line by line. He is actively weighing whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the, quote, slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them through sleep.
Which is his poetic euphemism for suicide, basically. For death.
Exactly.
He's attempting to perform like a cosmic cost-benefit analysis on the very concept of existence.
Yes, a cosmic cost-benefit analysis. And look at the specific anxieties he catalogs as the unbearable cost of living, because he talks broadly about the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. But then he pivots to highly specific, systemic societal grievances.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you as a modern listener. When you read the exact list of things torturing Hamlet's mind, it feels incredibly contemporary.
It really does.
Like, you are listening to a royal prince from the 1600s complain about the whips and scorns of time, the law's delay, and the insolence of office. I mean, come on. Who hasn't been profoundly frustrated by a bureaucratic nightmare or dealt with a terrible, arrogant manager who clearly shouldn't be in charge?
Everyone, right. And he also mentions the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes.
Oh, that one hurts.
It does. This is the deep, universal frustration of being a competent, hardworking person who is just constantly passed over, disrespected, or managed by people completely unworthy of their positions. It is this timeless, exhausting list of the daily friction of human existence.
But the text points out a massive contradiction, though. Because if life is this endless parade of bad bosses waiting in line at the DMV and suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, why do we put up with it? Like, why don't we all just opt out?
Well, Hamlet identifies his core psychological block here. He calls it the dread of something after death.
The undiscovered country.
Exactly. The undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns. It is the ultimate unknown variable in his grand equation. And he admits that this overwhelming fear puzzles the will. It makes us rather bear the ills we currently have than fly to others we know nothing about.
Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all. And he says, the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought.
I really want to push back on the traditional, highly romanticized reading of this play for a second here.
Go for it.
Because in school, we're taught to revere Hamlet as this deep, brooding, tragic philosopher. But based on the framework our source document just established about silence and true nature, isn't Hamlet basically suffering from the ultimate catastrophic case of overthinking?
Absolutely.
Like, doesn't he represent a total lack of the presence we just spent time defining?
Oh, completely. If we connect this to the bigger picture established in the opening of the text, Hamlet is the poster child for being entirely disconnected from knowing via being.
He's just trapped. Hopelessly trapped. He's trapped in knowing via analyzing. He is trying to rationally compute the infinite, unknowable variables of existence, morality, and the afterlife.
And the cognitive load of that calculation is literally crashing his brain. Like, the static is deafening.
He is completely paralyzed by that pale cast of thought. He notes that because of this relentless overthinking, enterprises of great pitch and moment turn their currents awry and lose the name of action. He cannot simply be, therefore he cannot truly act.
Wow.
Yeah, he is caught in the desperate anxiety of Betten to be entirely divorced from resting in his true nature.
And that dynamic is such a powerful, uncomfortable mirror for anyone listening right now. I mean, think about your own life. How often does the pale cast of thought, like obsessing over a difficult conversation you haven't even had yet, or fearing the undiscovered country of a massive career change, turn your own currents awry?
Oh, all the time. It's part of the human condition.
Right. But if Hamlet's agonizing question perfectly represents the human mind trapped in a loop of fear and overthinking, there has to be a mechanism for breaking out of it, right?
steps.
Yes.
And our source document reveals that Hamlet actually answers his own agonizing question much later in the story.
He does. The source takes a very deliberate leap from this famous, frantic moment in Act 3 to a much quieter, but frankly far more profound realization in Act 5.
The answer.
The answer. So, Hamlet is facing a fencing match that he strongly suspects is a lethal trap, but his psychological state has radically shifted from the man we saw earlier.
Okay, how so?
Well, the text provides this critical quote. He says, "Not a whit. We defy augury. There is a special providence in the fall of a sparrow."
Okay, wait. We defy augury. He's talking about divination, right? Like the practice of looking for omens to predict the future.
Exactly. He is explicitly rejecting the need to know what happens next.
Oh, wow. So he's completely stopped obsessing over the undiscovered country.
Yes. He accepts his lack of control. He goes on to say, "If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come."
That's just total unreserved acceptance that fate unfolds on its own timeline, regardless of our anxiety. Completely.
Let's use an analogy to really lock down the mechanics of this shift for you guys listening.
Yeah.
Imagine you are trying to navigate a really difficult, unpredictable journey. The to be or not to be mindset is like refusing to take a single step until you can download a highly detailed, massively pixelated satellite map of the entire 10-year route.
Right, zooming in on every little thing.
Yeah, constantly zooming in on potential traffic jams or storms years down the line. It demands so much processing power that your device just freezes.
That's a great way to look at it.
So defying augury is like throwing the map out the window and just looking at the analog compass in your hand.
Yeah.
You only process the step immediately in front of you.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question about the psychological paradox of control. Because in the to be or not to be speech, Hamlet was trying to control the uncontrollable, right? He's trying to control the inherent fairness of the universe, the actions of corrupt politicians, the exact nature of the afterlife. That desperate white-knuckled grasp for control over the future robbed him of any cognitive bandwidth in the present moment.
Sickly door with thought, literally.
Exactly. But by defying augury, he systematically relinquishes the illusion of control. He acknowledges a higher, mysterious order, a special providence in the fall of a sparrow.
Meaning even the tiny things are taken care of.
Right. This implies that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant events in nature are part of a larger tapestry that he doesn't need to understand to participate in. By letting go of the exhausting need to dictate the future, he instantly reclaims 100% of his energy and agency in the present moment.
Wow.
And that is the only way he arrives at his next instruction. Let be. It marks the absolute end of the internal struggle.
Let be. I mean, that phrase, let be, brings our entire exploration full circle back to the core concept we started with, which is presence.
It really does.
Because the source document explicitly links Hamlet's final philosophical realization directly back to the opening maxims about silence. Because right before he says let be, he utters 4 words that the document highlights as the ultimate key to the entire puzzle.
Yes. The readiness is all.
The readiness is all.
And the source text takes the time to explicitly define this phrase for us. It states, the readiness is all is another way of saying presence.
Okay.
It is the unconditional willingness to face whatever unfolds in the immediate reality, whether that happens to be the dreaded, undiscovered country of death, or just another random, frustrating twist of fate as life's daily journey continues.
But wait, I have to stop and ask a really messy question here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if I'm facing a brutal situation, let's say, a massive, unfair restructuring at my company, or like a sudden terrifying health diagnosis, how do I actually use this? I mean, doesn't readiness just sound like giving up?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Like throwing your hands in the air and passively saying, well, whatever happens, happens, I surrender.
It is a really common misconception, but readiness is not passive resignation. It is an intensely alive, highly alert state.
Unpack that for me.
Well, if you are passively resigned, you are still fundamentally disconnected from reality, you know? You have just chosen to be numb instead of panicked. Readiness, as defined as presence in this text, is more like an athletic stance for the mind.
Oh, an athletic stance.
Yeah. Imagine a tennis player waiting for a serve. They aren't braced rigidly for the ball to go to their left because if it goes right, they're beaten. They are balanced perfectly on the balls of their feet, holding no preconceived notion of the future, entirely open to responding to the reality of the ball's trajectory.
Oh, I see. So they aren't predicting. They're simply equipped to react.
Exactly. That is the knowing via being mentioned at the start of our journey. When you know your true nature is silence, you aren't preemptively braced for impact against the slings and arrows. You are simply open.
That makes so much sense.
You respond to the crisis of the moment not with pre-programmed inherited anxieties from your past and not with catastrophic predictions of the future, but with the unclouded clarity of the present.
You've basically turned off the radio static. You can finally hear the music of what's actually happening in the room.
Yeah.
And because you're approaching the crisis with clarity, you beneficially impact all that you encounter, which fulfills the promise made at the very beginning of the document. You can handle the insolence of office or the law's delay without it destroying your inner baseline, because you are anchored in the silence, not swept away by the noise.
And the text points out that this profound realization carries Hamlet to the very end of his life. As he lies dying, he asks his loyal friend Horatio to remain behind to tell his story. And his very last words in the entire play are, "The rest is silence."
Wow.
This serves as the ultimate proof that Hamlet finally reached his true nature.
He evolved from the noisy, frantic, exhausting overthinking of to be or not to be, all the way to the profound, impactful stillness of silence. He finally arrives at knowing via being.
It is the ultimate character arc, really, moving from a mind fractured by the illusion of control to a mind unified by profound acceptance.
It is an incredibly empowering framework for viewing our own daily struggles.
Yeah.
So let's just trace the full arc of the journey you've been on with us today. We started with the dense but profound philosophical premise that our true nature is, at its core, silence and love, and that tapping into this state is the greatest good we can offer the world.
Right.
We then watched, through the genius of history's greatest playwright, as Hamlet absolutely tortured himself with the cognitive overload of to be or not to be. We saw how trying to calculate the infinite variables of life and death only resulted in paralysis. And finally, we arrived at the ultimate practical antidote for that anxiety: presence.
Which brings it all together.
It really does. We encourage you to look at your own life and face your own outrageous fortunes, not with a frantic fear of the undiscovered future, but with the calm, clear-eyed resolve of let be, knowing deeply that the readiness is all.
And I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to explore on your own as you step back into your day. We've seen how Hamlet had to entirely drop his mental torment, his relentless need to analyze and predict to finally find his peace. So, if the readiness is all, and your true ultimate nature is indeed silence, what happens to the endless, noisy stories you constantly tell yourself about who you are?
That's a tough one.
It is. Because if you truly embrace the silence like Hamlet ultimately did, do your deeply held personal narratives, your endless grievances about the past, and your fearful, elaborate projections of the future, do they simply cease to matter? When the ego dissolves, does it leave behind nothing but the profound transformative impact of your presence?
Does the static just finally permanently fade away? It really makes you wonder what you'll actually hear when you finally reach over, turn that dial, and let the rest be silence.